Good morning and welcome back to the program where we talk about the fascinating world of New York City real estate and the people behind all of it. I would like to welcome my listeners and viewers in the United States and all around the world. I am Vince Rocco, and it is Tuesday morning here in New York City, and this is Talking New York Real Estate. At this hour, the housing market is intricately tied to mortgage interest rates, with fluctuations in rates exerting influence over its dynamics. When mortgage interest rates are low, borrowing costs decrease, making homeownership more affordable for prospective buyers. This typically stimulates demand for housing, as individuals are more inclined to purchase properties when financing is cheaper. As a result, low mortgage rates often lead to increased competition among buyers, which can drive up home prices and contribute to a seller's market. On the other side of that, when the mortgage interest rates rise, borrowing becomes more expensive, deterring some potential buyers and reducing overall demand for homes. Higher rates increase monthly mortgage payments and potentially price out certain segments of the market. In a higher interest rate environment, sellers may experience longer listing times and may need to adjust their pricing expectations to align with market conditions. Well, good luck with that. We will have all that and so much more as Talking New York Real Estate gets underway on this Tuesday morning. And in the news this morning, the Federal Reserve delivered a message last week, first in a policy statement and then in the news conference at which Chair Jerome Powell reinforced it. They are not cutting interest rates anytime soon, but maybe later this year, so they say. The Fed did signal that it is nearing a long-awaited shift toward cutting interest rates, evidence that its officials have grown confident that they are close to fully taming inflation. No longer does its policy statement say it's still considering further rate hikes. And on that same day, we saw a bad day for Wall Street stocks, particularly tech stocks. The Nasdaq tumbled by more than 2.8% by market close in what was its worst day since March of 2023. While the other two indices weren't far behind, with the S&P down 2% and the Dow shedding 1.6%. The famed photographer Annie Leibovitz has listed her full-floor West Village condo with 60 feet of striking steel windows showcasing the Hudson River for $8.5 million. This according to StreetEasy. She paid $6.5 million for the live-work condo, currently set up as a photography studio, and it's at 495 West Street in 2022. At the same time, she is also in contract to sell her Upper West Side resident, first listed in October of 23. That was last asking $8.6 million, a significant hit from the $11.3 million she paid for the unit in 2014. The duplex is at 88 Central Park West, where residents over the years have included Sting, Robert De Niro, Paul Simon, and Lorne Michaels. And it's a small price to pay, and it's paying off big time, with homeowners being far out of reach for most millennials and Gen Zers due to inflated asking prices, astronomical interest rates, and crushing student loan debts. 20 and 30-somethings are getting creative about buying homes. So, rather than scrimping and saving their last pennies in the hopes of one day purchasing a brick-and-mortar mini-mansion, money-savvy young adults are turning to an online retail giant for tiny prehab pads. Tiny houses on Amazon and other social media sites are the rage. One buyer, as a matter of fact, has a TikTok audience of over 8.6 million followers, so you know that his purchase will go viral after seeing his post. And finally, the Kansas City Chiefs will play the San Francisco 49ers in Super Bowl 58 after each won in their respective conferences. The matchup features a David and Goliath story of quarterbacks, with 49ers Brock Purdy picked last in the 2022 draft up against two-time Super Bowl champ and my man, Patrick Mahomes, with the Chiefs. It's the Chiefs' fourth trip to the Bowl in the past 5 seasons, giving the defending champions a chance to be the first team to win consecutive Super Bowl championships since the New England Patriots did it almost 2 decades ago. The Chiefs have won 3 Super Bowls. The 49ers have 5 Super Bowl wins, but haven't won since 1995. And it was the Chiefs who stopped them from their last chance at the trophy in 2020. This year's Super Bowl will be played on Sunday in Las Vegas. Kickoff is at 6:30 Eastern on CBS. Just be there. With me today are David Rodriguez from Loan Depot, John Harrison from Core, Kyle Klaus from Prestige Properties, and William McLarnon from Corcoran. All All right, guys, thank you so much for being here again today. We got a bro show today.
All right.
I want to really talk about, if we can get into as much detail as we can, about the financial situation in our housing market. Listen, I've said for weeks, it's not just about New York City. It's really about the U.S. It's about housing all over the place. But we here in New York City and our boroughs work exclusively here. So for us, things like interest rates really help or hurt. And right now, the buyer sentiment is kind of, I think, all over the map. We'll talk about that later, kind of confused. And I want to get into a little bit about what I talked about at the top of the show in the news piece, where the Fed said just last week he is not cutting rates. Okay? Back in December, he promised 3 rate cuts this year, 4 rate cuts in 25, and 3 rate cuts in 26. I mean, that was really, aspirational. But he did say, though, back in December, they weren't going to happen immediately. They weren't going to happen in January. They weren't going to happen in February, maybe, later on. Last week, he said, if they happen at all, it won't be until the middle of the year. So, David, I'd love to start with you because you are our resident mortgage broker here. From your perspective, what are you seeing? More importantly, what are you hearing from clients out there who are still kind of stuck on the fence saying, I really want to do this. I really need financing. I really want to buy something. But what the hell is happening?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. Good to see you all.
Always.
So funny enough, in December, that push of people seeing the prospect of rates even coming down brought a lot of people to the table. For those of you that were not taking vacation after the holidays or kind of been between like holidays and New Year's, we were flooded with pre-approvals, and a lot of people came to market that first week of January, right? So the people that are out there, they're actually transacting, which is a nice feeling, versus last year, it was a lot of like, I'm going to ask you a million questions, we're going to go through the whole process, and then I'm just going to sit and wait, right? I think I gave a statistic last time I was on the show. I had like 280 something pre-approval, like sitting on the sideline, right? So when I look at what happens now with the marketplace and rates coming, or the prospect of rates coming down, we've taken a lot of people that are tired of renting, and they're actually getting out there and starting to, starting to get the parameters at minimum for their search. And then you have other people that are actually transacting. Where I'm seeing issues now is, if you think about it, in December, we were all optimistic. Late by last week, we were not very happy after, Jerome Powell kind of gave his beautiful speech, and then also over the past weekend said some things on the news. And so now I have a lot of clients that just went into contract and they're like, was this the right decision? So I think what we all have to remember in our industry is we're going to see these oscillations for the next 3 months, right, at minimum. We all knew that they weren't going to lower, the Fed wasn't going to lower the Fed rate, the Fed funds rate in March. That was like a 40% chance. May was a potential chance, but now we're thinking it's going to be pushed back to like June or later, right? The Fed only meets 8 times a year, so we have to kind of go on their cycle. But once we start getting more information from various Fed presidents and kind of conversations over the next few weeks, you're going to see the market's going to price that in. So even though the Fed, funny enough, even though the Fed hasn't lowered rates, it's all about what is expected. What are the expectations? And that's what's going to be priced into the mortgage rates.
But it's a difference in direction, though, too, right? I mean, what I hear you saying is we're talking about the fact that interest rates aren't going to drop right away. But we're not asking, gosh, are the interest rates going to keep going up? At least it feels more stable. So there's a sense of that sentiment is that we're actually pointing in the right direction.
Right. Well, that's a good point. We're going to get to that in a minute, though. But I want to drill down just a little bit about what you said before, back to December when the announcement was made. People started, getting back into the thought of transacting, and you followed with they are transacting. Mm-hmm. So what has caused them to do that?
I think they're just tired. So I always like to start every pre-approval call with, it's a little corny, but what was your motivation to start this process? And I'm always expecting a gushy answer, because that's how I am as a human. And all New Yorkers are like, I'm tired of paying rent. And so I'm like, okay. And to be honest, people are just pissed. They don't want to pay $7,000 for a 2-bedroom anymore, right? They're tired of throwing their money away. And more importantly, a lot of these people got notice in December and early January what their bonus was going to be in February and March. So we just had a lot of bonuses paid out. So we're seeing people that want to transact now because it's highly likely that they got their bonuses, and especially in the financial world, a lot of those people are going to be leaving their jobs in the next couple weeks.
True. William, so David just mentioned something that I was going to get to a little later on, but while it's fresh on my mind, let's talk about it. So bonus is coming out in the next month or 2, 3, whatever. History has shown in this town where, the bonus money went to secondary homes, Hamptons and Catskills and, wherever, Poconos. You do a lot of high-end stuff. Where, in your mind, are the buyers going to go this year with their bonuses, which should be pretty decent because Wall Street didn't have a bad year last year? Are they going to be investing here in New York City, or are they going to be going elsewhere in some of the other territories that you guys look at?
Yeah, I think they'll continue to invest in Manhattan. It's always, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So if they haven't bought their pied-à-terre here, they'll buy it. If they're ready to upgrade, life events like having another kid, needing more space, they're going to transact. They're going to do it, whether interest rates go up or down. Like, some of these situations are inevitable,
and they're mostly cash too, right?
Yeah, mostly
cash buyers.
Exactly, and then the higher end market is mostly cash. So they're going to transact anyway. It's just a matter of if they're going to get the deal with, if they're going to get the deal they want.
Good question, John. So tell me, if they get the deal they want, where are buyers today in their mindset? We all have heard from buyers for years and years and years that I can't buy right now. I'm on the fence, and not necessarily because of interest rates. I think prices are too high. Prices have to come down. I know prices will come down, so I'm going to wait. Typical buyer's market, right? Don't do anything because prices are going to come down, and I don't want to get caught paying this price today when tomorrow the price is going to come down. What's the mindset here these days?
Well, I think it's the idea of not just waiting for a single event. Like when the interest rates started dropping last year, I think it was from 7.79 to 7.76 at the end of the week, ending November 2nd. That wasn't like a massive drop, but we noticed right after that, we started seeing the number of recorded contracts signed start to go up. So it couldn't have been that they were just waiting for a massive interest rate drop. I think it's that once they determined that we're going in that right direction, they started getting closer and closer to what could potentially become like some type of buying frenzy. So I think right now the buyers, and we've seen a lot of buyers come out of the woodwork, especially like just post-holidays into the second week of January, a lot of traffic pickup. And we ask those buyers and we ask the brokers that are working with them, like, what's happening? Why are your clients now deciding? And it's because they feel like, if we wait, and if there really is some type of rate drop, or if the hordes of people all start buying at the same time, they're afraid of the prices going back up. So I think it's trying to figure out, is the pricing good enough now? And is there really anything that's going to drive the price down? Or is this good enough? And should I jump in now before I start competing against other buyers? People don't want to get into bidding wars.
It's so interesting because, and my audience is probably tired of hearing me say this, but I say it almost every week. A buyer's market always will lead to a seller's market. And what happens when the seller's market happens, right? Somebody flips that switch. Buyers come out of their bedroom, out of the bed, running down the street with their hair on fire. Gotta buy. Why do you have to buy? Because I'm afraid the price is going to go up. What ends up happening? They pay over asking price. It gets stuck in bidding wars. It happens all the time. I don't understand the theory.
So even the people that are buying now that say they're doing it because interest rates have dropped, they're not necessarily even getting a loan.
Yeah.
They're not even necessarily, I've done a number of cash deals, and they say, well, it's because we've seen that things are stable, so now we want to, so are you financing? No, I'm not financing. But they're just looking for that sentiment. They're just looking for that idea that this is probably a good enough time, and those that are getting a loan, even if they buy now because the interest rates are lower, then maybe they will buy before the price goes up and then refinance if the interest rates really do sink again in the future.
One thing we're forgetting too in the marketplace here, we have a lot of first-time home buyers, and to get into this price point in New York City, you're generally getting a gift from family.
Yeah.
So a lot of people came off the holidays. They got mom and dad 1-2 extra glasses of Pinot, and next thing you know, they're getting a nice, wonderful gift. And we're also coming up on an election year where people are nervous about the estate transfer within a lifetime, which is how most people get a gift, is transferring estate while they're living. So people are concerned about that. So most of my questions that are coming from first-time home buyers, I'm also having to speak to their parents in Texas, Alabama, wherever, because they're like, we're tired of you paying $7,000 for rent. We want you to buy something. Here's a couple $100,000. Now, I know that's a very unique circumstance, but it's something that we all kind of
it happens a lot.
tend to see quite a bit.
Yeah.
That never happened to me.
Yeah.
I had to buy my own place.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever. Kyle, talk to me about, our what I consider our sixth borough in New Jersey, the coastline of northern New Jersey. We hear here in Manhattan, since December into the new year, an uptick in activity. I'm not so sure it's going to translate into all of the business or the transactions that we want it to, but hopefully, yes. Talk to us a little bit about the uptick in the housing market where you are. Has there been one, or is it still kind of flat?
No, there's definitely been an uptick. I think to your point, David, like with what you said about mortgage applications last time, I had a friend we both know from Loan Depot was, he did about 1,000 applications last year.
Yeah.
To 300 of them went through. And now there was, 600 sitting on the sidelines, and I saw it actually before the holidays because in the Hoboken area and Jersey City and the Gold Coast, we're seeing a lot of the offshoot. That's one of the nice things about being there. Also, I mean, now we're in New York City, so it's great hearing the trends there. But we're seeing, a lot of the people coming over from the city and buying, but. It's like anything else. Like it's relative in New York City is relative anywhere else to where it's, people are, the same issues are happening. There's still the same, I wouldn't say it's the problem with the first time home buyers. It's also with the people in their second homes looking and sitting on a 3% mortgage and going like, is now the right time to move to a house? So, but we're seeing a lot more transactions happening this year so far.
Yeah, I'm having the same issue in my book of business with sellers in particular for the same reason you just talked about. We're going to get to that in a little bit. But talk a little bit to me, for me, about the media coverage. And we all have, strong, opinions on media coverage across the board, whatever they're talking about or pontificating about or yapping about, whatever. You either agree with them or you don't agree with them. But do you think that our current housing market and interest rates and inflation has a lot to do with what people see or hear on television, but or read in newspapers without fully understanding what they're reading?
Can I just say, all right, so number one, and
because clearly
I preach this every time, the Fed funds rate does not directly correlate to mortgage rates.
Right.
So if
Thank
the Fed
you.
lowers rates, does
Thank
not mean
you.
mortgage rates are coming down immediately. I kind of said earlier in saying like it's what's anticipated, right? So I think that's the hardest part is trying to educate not only the agents, because a lot of agents aren't like the people around here in this table that are very educated. We have to educate the agents and the community, and then also our clients, right? So I think just highlighting that piece is a huge one. And so the papers and articles don't do a really good job of explaining it. Also, I hate to say it, mortgages are complicated. Like we try to bring it down to a level that's kind of in bite size. But at the end of the day, it's a financial product, a financial vehicle, and it's traded on the open market. So it's packaged, securitized, and then sold. So I think it's really hard, and what we're going to see going forward is going to be a really difficult kind of management on our part from our industry on how we kind of guide these clients, because they're going to be hearing things like, just wait till the papers come out today, like rates shot up last week a quarter point, right? And now everyone's going to lose it. So it's going to be really difficult to navigate.
That's my point, because what you see and hear, you're not necessarily educated the way you should be, but what you see and hear has to affect buyer confidence. And we have to take a break, but we're going to come back and talk about buyer confidence right after these messages. This is Talking New York Real Estate on the More Network. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back.
This beautiful set here at Studio 1873 is brought to you by the Everset. The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
All right, everybody, we are back. So we left off talking about consumer confidence and what people see, what people read, what people hear, whether it's political news, whether it's mortgage news, whether it's housing news. I think people get swayed by what they hear and don't necessarily always make the right decision. John, in your opinion, when you're talking to buyers, we're going to get to sellers in a minute, but when you're talking to buyers, does any of this come up in conversation? Like, I'm really confused, John. I don't really know what I should do.
Yeah.
I want to buy, but I'm really kind of hesitant to buy, for whatever reason they give you.
Yeah, so I like to remind people and clients especially that 2/3 of the population of the city rent. So only a third of residents here buy. A lot of the people that live in New York City moved here from somewhere else. And if they moved here from somewhere else and they're buying, that means they've got a whole bunch of family and a whole bunch of friends in another state and another city altogether that are talking to them about what they should do when they buy real estate. So that's one of the first things. Real estate works very differently in New York. So there's always some expectation setting that we have to do up front because they're going to say, but my uncle said this and I'm seeing this in the market. And what does that mean? And it's so different. So that's just built into our conversation. And we saw this through the pandemic. We've seen this after every major up and down when people are tuned in to the frenzy of the dialogue of the day, whether it's the news, whether it's whatever it is, there's a lot of this volatility. So what we try to do is bring them down to the strength that is New York City real estate and kind of bring it down to the essence of what they really want to try to do and just bring some calmness to it. So that they can make a strategic decision rather than, because you don't want your clients to make a rash decision just because they're afraid of something.
No, and it always should come down to value. Listen, we went through the COVID pandemic, which was not fun, and we all struggled, selling things and buying things and whatever else, and buyers and sellers the same thing. We comfortably came out of that, right, a year or so afterwards, and the market started booming mid-21 into most of 22, right? I mean, booming. I was on a new development project that I sold out in literally weeks at full price. I mean, I couldn't even believe the challenges, but yet the success of that particular project. And then all of a sudden, and I say simple things like real interest rates just come along and they go up a couple of points and crash the entire burning hot market. So I have to sit back and think, as a real estate agent, first and foremost, what the hell? I mean,
something has to be in the news cycle, though.
But you're right, and they're not. Most people nowadays are looking at the media, TV, TikTok, whatever it is. It's that 7-second attention span, and they're saying mortgage rates high, more. But that's all they can take in at that time.
Right. Yeah. And so they say, I can't do this.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I mean, that's where we take them through a bit of an exercise. If somebody says, I really want to do this, but I can't because I'm afraid of this, then I like to use the phrase, you need to negotiate with your future self. So
Love that.
If you're negotiating with your future self.
Explain that, please.
Yeah, sure.
I agree with you.
So listen, you don't want to buy now. You say that you really need to own a piece of New York City real estate. You don't want to buy now because you feel like you missed your chance to buy when it was 2.75. Right now, let's say the interest rates are 6.5 or something. Will you be happy if in 5 years the interest rates drop down to 4%? And then you buy it whatever the price is there. And I had a client recently say, well, no, because by then it's going to be more expensive. And I say, well, will you have wished that you bought now? And he said, of course I would. I said, okay, just keep in mind you have a future self and you have to be that person looking back and not just get stuck now in what you could have done 5 years ago or 3 years ago. If we get stuck in running from fear, like, oh, I missed my chance, or the news is saying this, and we're just constantly in fear, we're going to be paralyzed, and we'll never make the decisions that actually move us towards what our real goals are. So that's where we like to try to boil it down.
That was your meditation minute by John, everybody. So.
But what is the essence of what you're really trying to do?
Yeah.
And then let's come up with a strategy.
I just want to piggyback off something you said, really genius right there, because I think of especially the people sitting at this table and as more of a real estate advisors than agents, and that's why you're seeing in this hard markets a lot of agents falling out because they're not as skilled as that, and they take it for, like you said, I can't buy. The agent goes, okay, I'll listen to my client. Boom. Now you're being pushed, not pushed around, but you're being you're not doing what's best for your client because you're not having the conversation you just had.
Yeah.
Well, I've said for years, even in markets where the interest rates were not a problem and, purring along and probably even in hot markets, I've said all the time, an advisor role versus an agent role is what we are. And a lot of that comes with experience. As my dad used to say, until you walk the earth long enough like me, you're not going to have that smarts or that wisdom or whatever. And quite frankly, it's true. But the bottom line is, I've always addressed it with, okay, you think the price is high today. Let's look at the value proposition of this property. Let's look and see what the value is today. But more importantly, we can see value, or we should be able to see value in the future when it's time to sell that property. Because if you can see the future value and map it to what you see today, then the price is really irrelevant, right? And especially, I come from the days where, everybody paid big money for apartments, made hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in a resale, right? So it's like, think about what tomorrow can bring you. But what I'm seeing today is people just want a lower price because they think it has to happen. They're not necessarily hearing the argument of value, even when I talk to my sellers. My sellers are digging in saying, oops, I know I could make $300,000, $400,000 on a sale, but I don't want to pay 3% more in interest. Okay?
And I'm also trying to
refinance when the time comes. Refinance.
I'm trying to educate sellers that are looking to buy something else, and they're again being greedy, but they have to buy something else. And I'm like, why don't you do something nice for the community? Like the price point of your sale is $300,000-$500,000, right? Like, why don't you accept, the community in New York doesn't accept less than 10% down at contract.
No.
Why don't you try 5%? And what if the client gets approved prior to contract? You can do that with certain banks, right? Mm-hmm. So the only thing that's outstanding is appraisal and building approval. So like, why don't we try that? And also, why don't you pay, think about it, on a $400,000 purchase, if you allow 5% down, and then let's say that it might be slightly overpriced, or at least it's comping there, but the market's not transacting at that, and you've had it listed for 30 days. Why don't you, Mr. Seller or Mrs. Seller, actually pay for the closing costs? Think about it. $20,000 of closing cost is $100,000 of additional purchasing power for some people. Mm-hmm. So now between the 5% and the $20,000 down, we're adding affordability to people that are just stuck.
And it's coming out of the proceeds, so it's not like cash out of
And now the
pocket.
seller they need to sell that property, and I'm speaking from experience on a deal, to buy something else.
Yeah.
So this is where I'm really coaching, and that's what I'm calling it now. I'm coaching people.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, you're being stubborn, and here's what will get you a successful transaction in real estate over the next 10 years, right? And we gotta keep on with our advisory role, and I think it's been really challenging. I'll say that.
But it's not even just to force somebody to transact. It's not even about trying to say the magical things to get a client to buy or sell. I've had clients, I've had a couple of my favorite clients where I told them at a time, don't sell now. And they thought they had to sell out of fear.
Absolutely.
And I said, wait, you don't need to sell this now. But it was a sense of fear, and they hung on to it and almost doubled the value when they finally did sell.
I want to get into the lack of inventory that we're all experiencing, really kind of nationwide, but again, for our purposes here in New York City. William, you guys, your team, is seemingly doing, routine business, one after the other, high end, medium end, whatever it is. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing from an inventory or lack of, because it seems like listings are coming out, regularly. So I have to wonder why here and not here, right?
Yeah, sure, Vince. So, we put up a bunch of listings in January, and we found, there are a lot of buyers who couldn't find something last fall cycle. They're right back out looking for the property to buy. So, I'm realizing like there's not a lot of inventory out there. So you end up basically absorbing almost every single buyer in that sub neighborhood, or, you end up coming across some listings, the same buyer,
What I'm seeing a lot too lately is, from very successful agents, I'm seeing a lot of emails come around in search of, meaning I can't find, and yesterday someone sent me an email with, I think they were 10 client requirements, and I kind of chuckled and thought, wow, that's because there's a lack of inventory.
It doesn't exist. It's not.
But it's exactly what you just said. In the last cycle and into this cycle, there isn't anything else to show.
That's it.
So they're kind of hanging out, these buyers, like waiting, and some of these price points were, significant, 15 million, 8 million, 5 million. And I'm thinking, well, if you tackled half that list, you'd have a great year, okay, honestly. But holy cow, is it the same in your neighborhood?
Yeah, Vince, it definitely is. But it's a great opportunity for savvy real estate agents to reach out and create that, present that opportunity to sellers that might not know about it. For instance, we had a situation like that where somebody was looking to check a couple boxes, parking and this and that, and it sold for a $2 million price point in Hoboken, which is very high in Hoboken, and it was just a matter of getting in touch with sellers saying, hey, look, we have buyers looking for this, and them going, I would sell at this price. I didn't know I could get that, or anybody was looking for something like that, and their lack of inventory is huge right now.
It never ceases to amaze me. 22 years in the business, that every cycle is something different. But talk to me about neighborhoods, okay? Because as people say to me, "What's the market in New York City doing?" and I'm like, "What market are you talking about?"
Yeah.
Okay,
So
because
many
there's
different
not
markets.
any one market anymore. It's across the board, neighborhoods, blocks of neighborhoods, streets, whatever. Talk to me about neighborhoods and what is happening in neighborhoods in general. Are they all pretty much experiencing the same thing? Lack of inventory, buyer hesitation, interest rate, concerns, or is it just Manhattan, or is it just Brooklyn?
I feel like there are.
Because you're all over the place. Tell me what.
I'm all over the place. Yeah, I feel like there are, these different neighborhoods. There's like, primary and then secondary and then tertiary neighborhoods. And so if there is something happening, let's say that inventory starts disappearing, then maybe that happens in a core central part of Manhattan. And then once that inventory disappears, then people start saying, well, let's expand and go to another neighborhood. And then it starts to go to another neighborhood. Sometimes certain edges of Central Park, which people just have forgotten about. And then after their primary search is they've exhausted everything there, they go to some other neighborhood and say like, oh, well, this is really beautiful. But then there's some momentum and people start to fill into that as well. So I feel like ultimately a lot of the same things happen across Manhattan and parts of Brooklyn, but not all at the same time. So it sort of leads in one spot, and then that expands to another spot, and then that expands to another spot. But there are definitely different neighborhoods, and they serve different purposes. Kips Bay, for example, one of the new developments I'm selling is in Kips Bay. That has historically been mostly rental, and now there are just a couple of new developments, and we are seeing like massive uptick in traffic. And we recognize that it's because it's close to schools. There's so many restaurants. There's a Trader Joe's. So sometimes those types of
Trader
things,
Joe's.
Yeah,
Who
like
doesn't want
seriously,
Trader
they
Joe's
should
in their
sponsor
neighborhood,
you.
right?
Yeah.
Yes,
Like,
they should.
But sometimes,
I spent a
there's
lot of money in Trader Joe's. Yeah, of course they should.
Nomad, we've been selling in Nomad, and that over the last year has been getting a ton of press about that becoming a more and more revered and
Well, that leads
Nomad
me.
gets a lot of buyer foot traffic.
yeah.
Yes.
Also, remember
So
2 years ago?
Yes, it
that
does.
didn't happen.
Yeah,
That
2
was
years
that
ago,
was like
everyone
a
was
ghost
scared
town.
of Nomad because after post-pandemic.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
Correct, but Nomad, he's right, has gotten a lot of interest lately and a lot of foot traffic. I'm going to say kind of like in line with Soho, right?
Yeah.
For sure.
I had a $5 million listing, and I had like 3 showings every single week for like 8-9 weeks in a row. Like it was, the buyers are there. So.
Yeah.
You mentioned danced around new development, and I wanted to ask you about new development
Sure.
because you do that well, and you just recently sold out, or I think almost sold out.
Almost, yeah.
A really great product.
Thank you.
In not such a great market. Okay, so tell us how you did that, and tell us, from your perspective, why people are still looking at new developments in uncertain markets versus the traditional resale apartment.
Yeah. So the building is Rose Hill. It was Rockefeller Group's first ever residential project in Manhattan.
Yeah.
And we were selling that through the pandemic. And the trick is, we weren't doing any discounts. And so we'd had people that came in and that were asking like, well, why can't I get my client a 10% discount here? It's the pandemic. But I think that
Why not, right?
For the
How
why
about
not? Hey, listen,
15%?
Also, who decided 10%? Because everybody came out the gate 10%.
I know.
I was like,
But the idea
And you got to
is-
pay my common charges for a year.
yeah, for 5 years. So
Yeah,
like,
well, there you go.
but I think that the idea is that whatever your narrative is, you've got to sort of sink into that in the beginning. And so it was easy enough for us And it wasn't easy, but it was easy enough because then as people started recording their deals, then we could point to actual records and people saw, oh, wait, John is actually being very transparent about this. But I think the idea is, when we were showing at some point, it was a ghost town. It was post-pandemic or like in the middle of that, ending phase. And a lot of places were still closed down. But we had to just remind people, this is New York. Like the city has gone through such treacherous things in the history, but let's figure out what's permanent. And if you are, we talk about this idea of it's more like we're selling a blue chip stock. We're selling something that that has permanence to it, and I think that's what really carried the project. So now you're right; it's 95% sold.
It's a stunning project, by the way,
Thank
and
you.
it's in a great neighborhood.
I wish I could take any credit for the design of it at all. I can't. Happy to be a part of it.
But you're selling it well, and that's all that matters. So I get that. So comparing new development to resale, are you still seeing that buyers are kind of trying to decide which is better for them? When I was selling new development, I always used to say the traffic coming to see my new developments wanted new, only new, did
It's
not
true.
want anything else. Is that still the
I
same?
continue to ask people when they come in, whether it's this project or other projects that I'm working on, like, so are you just shopping new development or are you just focused on this neighborhood? And most of the time, I still hear I'm buying new. I think there are people that are just looking for the best overall thing that will give them the most joy and the most value. And whether it's something new or something old, they don't really care. But there are definitely people that are trying to buy new. And they're doing it for a few reasons. And some of them are financial because there's this concept that when you buy new, once it sells out, then it can potentially accelerate your equity. But I do still see the majority of the people that we have coming in are shopping for new.
And I get a lot of first-time homebuyers that want to go to Brooklyn for new development, right?
There's a ton there.
And so that's where there is a lot of it coming out, and they're banging it out quickly. And I'll say somebody that started the trend back kind of a couple years ago that works here, very, very smart man, would wait until putting the actual units on market when the client could see and feel and touch. And that exploded the Brooklyn market for new development. And now everybody's doing that. So when I get the calls for new dev, these clients are overjoyed for that.
Yeah, David, so talk to me a little bit about, the special programs that your financial institution might have available or make available to people in these uncertain times where there's concern about interest rates. Do you have a little thing that you dangle in front of them saying, hey,
Lots, yeah.
come work with
Lots
me
of
and I'll
those,
get
yeah.
you some kind of good deal?
Yeah, so
Right.
First thing I will kind of touch on is people that are moving up. So we recently just had a client where they don't have a lot of money saved, but they bought in 2019 and they have a ton of equity. So they wanted to do a home equity line of credit. We did a home equity line of credit in 3 weeks. And then literally the next week, they went out, made an offer on a new condo and bought a new place and used the money for the down payment. And now we did it skillfully to where they're renting out their current place to cover all, because the rate was so low from 2019, because that was still a good time. They are able to cover all the expenses, right? So that was a huge win for those people. So I'm seeing a lot of that. I'm seeing a lot of first-time home buyers that want to put down 10%. And so what I typically do on our pre-approvals, I'll say, all right, let's do the 10% down. But when you make the offer, I'm going to call the client. I'm going to call the listing agent, discuss what are the pros or what are the cons. So we're seeing a lot of that for the first-time home buyers. I'm trying to think what else here. What was your exact question? Sorry.
No,
Things you can dangle.
oh, dangle.
instead of-
Oh,
any kind of
Interest rate
incentive.
protection.
Now I have I'm on Mucinex. So I have one of the most important things that I'm dangling to every person that's about to sign contract. They're like, oh my God, the rates went up in the last 3 days. I'm like, okay, yes, but next week we have more economic reports and whatever. But here's the thing: you don't have to lock your loan at the time you sign your contract.
Correct.
Number one. Number two, let's say we did lock our loan. And if for any reason the rates come down over a quarter point, most lenders offer a renegotiation policy. That's not exclusive to just me. So that's something really important that we have to educate the buyers. You want to lock somewhere that you're comfortable, but even if the rates come down, you can renegotiate the rates. So everybody that closed in early January that we had locked in November, which was not that great, they were able to renegotiate. So that's a huge one, renegotiation of interest rates.
All right, we have to take a break. We are coming right back. This is Talking New York Real Estate on the More Network. Don't go anywhere.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, It's serious business. And it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
All right, we're back. So, Kyle, I want to ask you. So, out on the Gold Coast, what is the sentiment right now with inventory, with everything involving in housing? Are there more cash deals going on out there versus finance deals? And how are people making that decision? Are you getting a lot of second and third time sellers who are buying for the second and third time where they can turn around and use cash, or do they still want to finance? What's happening out there?
I would actually say right now we're getting a lot of financing deals. We're not getting a lot of cash deals. And we're getting yeah. I think it's just a matter of people getting used to some of the rates, wanting to transact. I think that if you're priced right, you're still selling pretty quickly. I would say, like we were talking about in certain, in Hoboken, it's right. It's like a borough of New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And
Sixth borough, I keep saying that.
Yeah, but and you're mostly dealing with condos there. If you're pricing it right, you're getting it sold, and then they're going out and buying something in the next town over, and there's bidding wars and everything.
What about new development? How's new development doing out there?
I was gonna mention we sold new development. I had a new development project with a couple other brokers during the pandemic time, and they it's still the same thing, new. Like I would say half of the buyers that came into there was like, we want new. And they were offering a lot of incentives, but there's not so much new development right now.
Which leads me to my next question is developers, okay? And you're probably closer to developers these days, still working on one. What are developers out there who are building buildings thinking about this current marketplace and the stagnation of buyers and the lack of movement? Because I'm supposed to be starting a new project in February. Well, last I checked, it's already February, okay? Not going to happen, okay? Probably March. Where are the developers? Because, by the way, I was telling somebody the other day, they pay the same, construction loan interest rates that buyers pay, right? It's not that they're getting any breaks necessarily. So where is their head right now with, forget starting a project, finishing a project, or getting more financing to move that project along or to finish that project?
Well, I think that, and what Vince is addressing is this concept of financing. As a developer, you have all different types of financing. You have equity partners, you have debt partners, sometimes short-term financing, construction loans, and everything else. The first key, though, is it is definitely way more expensive now to build than for those developers that had started this project, some type of project like 4 years ago.
I was going to say, and they priced things 4 or 5 years ago.
I mean, because then we had, if you look at over the last few years, we've had supply chain issues. At some point, like lumber, and we're not building wood houses, but like lumber pricing skyrocketed. And so then when people started using more metal, that caused metal pricing to go up, labor, all of these things.
I had refrigerators in my last project floating in the ocean somewhere during the supply chain. Putting off closings for 8 months. I said, cancel the order and order something else.
Seriously, go just pick something up temporarily.
Well, he did that, and all of a sudden we got the refrigerators from someplace else. Wow.
Yeah, but like just the way things happen. So the idea of building something that is now built, it can't be done for the same price. So that's really tough. You're asking, though, about developers who have already built, and maybe they need to finish the build, or they need to figure out how to reposition the remaining inventory. I think if they underwrote the project based on a certain price expectation, developers just have to now figure out what are the updated expectations. Sometimes it doesn't necessarily mean that they've got to sell for less, but sometimes the pricing has to be a little bit clearer, or it has to make more sense, or they have to look at where the buyers are coming from and really focus on bringing those types of buyers in. And there's not any fair housing type issues, but like if it's built for a certain size or certain amenities or its proximity to stores, or if there are no stores, then let's figure out how to show people that you can get your groceries delivered really easily. But I think figuring out where the market is now, but the new developments, and I'm I'm on another new development right now as well, and we are seeing tremendous amount of traffic because I think that we are in a good price point for the neighborhood. So developers figuring out whether or not they have the price point that matches the neighborhood where people are buying.
And that's key. That's always been key, but it's nice to see that sometimes it actually works.
Yeah.
William, what price point in your business is moving the quickest, selling the fastest, and is getting the most attention? Where are we? I mean, the luxury market I think is defined as 4 million and up. I kind of say no, that's probably 6 or 7 million and up, because it seems like everything is 4 million or 3 million or 2 million, right? What in your opinion? What is the market the price point that's moving the best?
Sure, absolutely.
Or the fastest?
So, I mean, it makes me look back at last fall cycle, what we got in contract, what we sold. We got 2 of these Flatiron lofts in contract last cycle. They were both under $2.5 million. In Flatiron, there's not a lot of inventory in Flatiron, so they were both unique, sold one after the other. I would say just based off the last cycle, the $2.5 million price point, even 1.5, depending what you get, it's all.
I'm seeing like 2.5 million probably moving the fastest for whatever reason. It just seems to be like all over the place.
They've been on the sidelines. They're qualified. They're just trying to find what they want. And some of them, some families or buyers, they've been ready, and they're going to settle for something, or they're going to see the price come down. And some of our sellers, we had to do some small price reductions, and that's what led to getting deals done. So,
are you seeing an uptick in your open houses or your general showings during the week? Forget about whether they're buying or not. Are you seeing an uptick in traffic in open houses, or just general,
yes,
weekly showings?
The last 2 to 3 weeks, I've definitely seen a buyer uptick. Like especially the Monday through Friday buyers. Like we've been getting appointments middle of the week, which is always a good sign outside of like the standard weekend open houses. But yeah, the last 2 to 3 weeks, I've seen an uptick.
And all right, go ahead. I want to ask you a question anyway. Go ahead.
Not to take up too much time, but while you're on this, I want to ask this one question to you because we have this amazing listing now in Soho at 25 West Houston, and it's been getting like 3 to 4 showings. Yeah. How many showings are you throughout the week, but no offers right now? So how many in maybe that neighborhood are you seeing like per week, or how long are they sitting on the market for?
Yeah, so it always depends on the price point. I'll give an example. Like this Chelsea 1-bed townhouse residence, we're getting we got like 3 to 4 showings for a 1.5 price point, and it's a co-op, which
3 to 4 showings in one open house, or one
like basically in a week.
Oh, in a week.
Between
okay.
Weekdays
okay.
and open house.
Mm-hmm.
So, and for co-op, I think that's you usually get less showings on a co-op in my experience. So I think that's good. But yeah, back to your question, it depends on the price point. And then we just launched this $9 million penthouse in Soho, and even that got like 3 increase just this week. So
it looks pretty special, yes. And I can again, but that's a certain price point that there are those buyers out there. There's many of them, but they're out there and they want to see everything in that price range, right? That just is. I know the listing you're talking about. It's a little under $2 million, I think. It's a great listing. It shows well. It's photographed beautifully. And I've said to your guy, it's similar. It's just, it's a process. Nothing is that should have sold in a week. Yeah. Typically. Yeah. Okay. But the buyers are like, hey, it is what it is. Talk a little bit about the rental market, because the rental market, somebody alluded to it before in the beginning of the show, in an uncertain time now, rental prices, by the way, went through the roof 2 years ago, a year ago. Sure. I mean, astronomical. Average price of a 1-bedroom in Manhattan, $5,000 something a month, and I'm thinking, oh my God! Of course, they want to call David and say, I need to get a mortgage and buy an apartment. $5,400. So now it's come down a little bit, and people are still kind of freaked out about, well, do I stay? Do I go? What do I do? What's happening with the rental market? I mean, where are we?
Well, I mean, again, 2/3 of the population,
as it relates to the interest rate drama.
But we always will have a pretty strong rental market. I had a conversation.
Well, 80% of this town is still rental.
Yeah, right? Easily. I had a conversation with a friend yesterday And he asked me, he said, John, explain this. He said, why is it that, condo prices are going up and rental prices are still pretty high, but then in my building, the sale prices are low? And I was trying to figure out, and I said, wait a second, do you own a co-op? And he said, yes. And I said, well, there you go. And he's like, what do you mean? And I said, well, because it's sort of a different market. Liquidity is the key driving factor that differentiates a condo versus a co-op. But if you're renting, as a renter, you don't care what happens to the building 3 years from now. You don't care if you can sell. So now to extrapolate from that, there are different types of liquidity that people need. Some of them, it's the liquidity of their own movement. I need to be able to come in and live somewhere for a couple of years and then move. New York will always support that type of drive because you're fresh out of college, you're a financial analyst, you want to come live somewhere for a couple of years. We are always going to have, knock on wood, a pretty strong rental market. So the real question is, okay, of those renters that are thinking about becoming buyers, are the interest rates enough to tempt the person to get out of the rental game? And I think we're always going to have that conversation. We were having that conversation when interest rates were 2.75. Yep. There were renters that were saying, yeah, but I don't know, because like I could buy.
Well, back then they were like, well, we don't think the prices are going to go up.
Yeah, we don't think the prices. So regardless,
this is New York
of what
City.
happens,
You're always going to have those conversations, regardless of where we are, right?
That's the point. 275. I remember doing. We were putting together this sort of rent versus own seminar, and we were talking through people, and some people realized, like, wait a second, I actually could own for less than rent. Well, now interest rates are high, but you do still have some interest-only options, and
Okay, let's take a break. 1 second. Everyone's worried about the payment. But you go out and you're eating at Carbone for $500 twice a month. Okay, honey, cut the food and buy a place. Like I'm sorry. Like it's
well, so all that to say, that conversation will always be around.
No, it always will be around. So it leads me, you jump the gun.
So hard.
No, listen, you're right.
I'm so tired of these conversations with these buyers. And
No, you jumped the gun on what I was going to ask you anyway, and I'm glad you did, because I was going to say, when you're looking at applications, and somebody is paying whatever they're paying in rent,
statement, credit card bill,
and then you say, all right, so your mortgage and your new interest rate, your mortgage payment, your whatever, is going to be either the same as what you're paying in rent or a little less. Do you see any of that, or is it kind of like
tons? So,
and how do you approach that with them? Like, are you crazy? You need to buy.
So I think the hardest thing I have with first-time homebuyers is actually not the payment, believe it or not. It's the assets of what you need for down payment. And again, this is where I preach so much. Like, we don't allow most people need 20% down to buy here. And then if you're buying new development and this developer's making you pay all the closing costs, now you're talking $100,000 for closing costs. Like, it can be outrageous. So what I do is
crazy.
So that's what I'm trying to educate on, especially my first-time homebuyers. I'm like, yes, you're going to pay $6,000 a month. Right now, you're paying $3,800. Because you got a roommate, like, way to go. But now you're going to go to $6,000. Let me ask you a question. Would you normally save $2,500 and put into your savings accounts every month? And they're like, yeah, no brainer. Great. Let's buy a place. Let's get you something maybe not 20% down. Let's do it at 15% down. Let's hope, let's make sure we work with your agent in a market that's going to appreciate, so not neighborhoods that are just kind of stagnant. And let's see how we can get you some equity, and then in a couple of years we'll refinance it, and then the money you would be putting in savings, we're actually putting it into the property.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you one other question. Hold on a minute. One other question. So, what is the ratio of first-time buyer in the applications that you come across your desk every day, every week? Ratio of first-time buyers to second-time buyers, third-time buyers, experienced buyers.
Okay, so
where
last
is it
quarter it was probably 5% move on ups. So, kind of already owned going up, and 95% first-time homebuyer. So my life was a lot of conversations, and I sound like I did now after every day.
95%
first-time homebuyers. Now we're seeing it kind of move down. I'm probably at like 15 to 20% people moving on up.
That's an interesting statistic.
And then I still have, it's just first-time homebuyers here are just tired of paying $3,000 to $7,000 in rent. Sure. And the bank of mom and dad, they are issuing dollars. That's all I got to say. So
grab it while you can. You wanted to say something.
Quick thing, and I wanted to talk to you guys about this. Was like, in a market like we're dealing with right now on the Gold Coast, the rents have gone up so much, but it's easy to have that conversation with buyers to say, hey, look, you're paying $7,000 for a 3-bedroom. You could own for less than that. But I'm
that's
curious,
my point. Yes.
Well, that's an easy conversation when the price is dictated. But I'm curious about, and I don't want to throw New York City under the bus in some boroughs, but I could see how a $2 million price point, when you can rent for $8,000 a month, might be, like, so how are you guys doing?
Take
with
that price point. So that's $8,000 a month for the rental. Versus if you bought that into the common charge, you're paying $12,000, right? So that's $4,000 more a month. So the question is, it's a lot more money, but are you putting that money into savings actively? What are you doing? Like, what are you planning for your future lifestyle? And a lot of these people, they're tired of being transient and they want foundation, right? And so that's kind of going back to your question.
Can you otherwise make up the $50,000 a year of savings or appreciation?
Exactly. So
not eating carbone so much.
Yeah, and don't eat a carbone. Sorry, now they're gonna come after me.
Well, it's a great place.
Yeah, and I was like,
this episode brought to you by Carbone.
Send me a gift certificate. I'll take it.
Yeah, exactly.
Bottom line is, there is so much to talk about either way with these conversations. It's and when you're having them with buyers and when you're having them with sellers, whether they're long-term buyers and sellers or short-term, or people who still want to just rent because, hey, you know what, it's easier for me to do that. I don't necessarily always know what the answer is. I try my best, and sometimes, at the end of the day, my voice is hoarse. But it's curious because I'm going hopefully back on a project, a new development very soon, and I don't know where, because closing costs in new developments are so expensive.
It's true.
So expensive. So I'm wondering, even for the smaller apartments, the studios, the one bedrooms, although this building doesn't have studio, but one bedroom, how much can they absorb? How much cash? Mom and dad, great, I get it, but wow, it's the purchase price, it's the down payment, it's the closing cost. I mean, I remember my last project, hundreds of thousands of dollars at the closing table. That's a lot of money.
I think under 1.5.
What does that do to the market?
Under 1.5, it would be a terrible thing if the developer doesn't at minimum cover their own closing costs and their attorney.
Well,
and price it in, because here's the deal: it's easier to finance more than it is to save if you're a W-2 employee. We are taxed so highly, and I say that because I'm a W-2 employee. Right. We get taxed like crazy. We don't have a lot of write-offs. So a lot of the people that are buying a new development that actually will pay for developer closing costs are self-employed. And then my W-2 people, they're the ones that don't want to, that hard-earned cash post-tax is at 50%. They don't want to pay those crazy closing costs. So under 1.5, my advice for most developers is they need to give incentives to cover some of the closing costs, at minimum the seller's portion. And if you want to be smart and get rid of the last 5% units, you pay the buyer's closing costs, 12 months of maintenance, and buy down the interest rate. And that's how you fire sale it.
Well, as John will tell you, being experienced in new developments and working with developers, you win that sometimes, and sometimes you don't. I mean, with my first development 16 years ago that I sold, I guess it was a hot market, no movement on purchase price, no movement on any closing costs. It was first come, first serve. And I would say to people in the sales office, if you don't want, because they would negotiate with me, well, what about that? Look. Here's the deal. You see the 20 people waiting in the reception room, waiting to come in and talk to me, okay? You don't want this? At least 10 of those people do. Well, we sold everything at full price, everything with not one concession. Of course, through the years, things changed, okay? But that was that. And I still remember that. And that's the building I still sell in all the time, resales and rentals and whatever. And so when they give me a hard time about the selling price because they $300,000, $400,000 more than what they paid for it, and I remind them, excuse me, I sold you the apartment. I know what you paid. And I know.
Can't pull one on Vince.
And I still have the closing statement in my file drawer, okay, all these years later. So don't tell me not enough.
Well, I think that's where you've got to be really and this goes back to working with clients too. There isn't something that is always the answer. You said a while ago, you don't always know the answer. That's true, but there's definitely not a single thing that is always the answer.
Not
and
at
that's
all.
With clients, with prospective customers, but that's also building to building. Looking at one new development versus another. Maybe one is giving away 20% and they're not giving away enough. And maybe another one's holding firm, not giving away anything, and maybe they're giving away too much because of the pricing. So that's where it takes an advisor to help you understand as a buyer, like, why is it that this one's more expensive? Is it more expensive because it should be? And does that make sense for you?
All right, that's our Bro Show. We're coming right back with my thoughts of the week. Don't go anywhere. All right, I'm back with my thoughts for the week. So, navigating uncertain markets in New York City real estate requires a combination of strategic planning, flexibility, and a deep understanding of the market dynamics. Firstly, staying informed about the current market trends and economic indicators is essential. Real estate professionals and consumers should continuously analyze data on inventory levels, pricing trends, and buyer-seller sentiment to anticipate changes and make adjustments accordingly. Additionally, fostering strong relationships with clients and maintaining open communications is crucial. By providing guidance and managing expectations, agents can help their clients navigate uncertain markets with confidence. This is important, and remaining flexible in negotiations and adapting pricing strategies based on changing conditions is essential for success. Finally, leveraging professional networks and collaborating with other industry experts can provide valuable insights and opportunities in uncertain times. By employing these strategies, real estate professionals can effectively navigate uncertain markets in New York City and help clients achieve their objectives with confidence in any market. And that's our broadcast for today. Thanks to my guests for being here on set with me. You can follow me on Facebook, on Threads, Instagram, LinkedIn, or TikTok at Vince Rocco, or on my website, thinkvince.com. Norman Vincent Peale says, shoot for the moon, everyone. Even if you miss, you'll land among the stars. And next week, we will discuss a forecast for 2024 with special guests and more. And be sure to subscribe to our More Network for other guest shows. And to all of you around the world, from all of us here at Talking New York Real Estate, thank you again for spending a part of your day with us. I will see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.